Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Dom and Drew Show. We have Dom. How are you, dude?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks
Doing
for having me
good.
on again.
Yeah, oh my pleasure, dude. I love this series we're doing, and it seems like the people that are watching are liking it as well. So, for everyone who hasn't watched before, basically what we do, at least at this point in our collaborative show, is just read Vatican II documents and react to them
hmm
as we're reading. So, we've been going through the decree on the Apostolate of the Laity. I don't attempt to say it in Latin like Dom does because that would be bad. But we've gone through the first three chapters of this in four
hmm
episodes. So if you haven't seen those episodes, make sure you go to the playlist for this series and catch up on them. And then you can know where we're at with this one. But in the meantime, in the comments, or sorry, in the description, I actually have the document linked so that you can find it. Because it's frustrating when people are talking about a thing and you like want to find it and it's really hard to find, which anything on the Vatican
Yep.
website can be that way. So it's linked there for your convenience. So as you're listening, you can read along with us, but we'll also, and I'll do this now, pull it up on screen. So we'll just, we can start going through it. But yeah, it's been good. Dom,
Wonderful.
what's been your, I mean, you've had some good reactions to the show. What have been your thoughts so far on doing this? I mean, I'm enjoying it, but maybe you're just putting up
Yeah, I've
with
had
me.
a
Who
couple
knows?
people. No, I'm enjoying it a lot. I had a couple people, comment saying thank you so much for doing this. People in private telling me, no one's actually reading through the council, and thank God you guys are doing it. So I'm getting positive feedback. So
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It looks like we have a couple people hopping in to hang out with us. So welcome to everybody. Um, I'm trying to think like it's been a couple weeks since we've done this. So as I pull the document up, do you think you'd be qualified to give us a description of what we read so far, or because I have no idea.
oh
I can't
man.
remember.
Well, let me try. I don't know if I'm qualified, but let me try. I guess to summarize where we're at, in the document, we talked a lot about the fact that the lay people are in the world in a way in which priests, bishops, and hierarchy is not,
Mm-hmm.
which means that there's a particular responsibility given to lay people that
Mm-hmm.
belongs to them in particular, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
as it belongs to the priest to, in virtue of his ordination, be the person who stands in the place of Christ at the altar to offer the sacrament of the Lord's body, something that lay people participate in through the priesthood of their baptism, but in a way that is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so in other words, the document has been very good at distinguishing between lay people and the clerical state, saying
Mm-hmm.
precisely that there's something about the vocation of lay people that's very important for the goals of the council, which is really to sanctify the temporal order. And that was a huge aspect. And it got into some particular details about states of life, whether you're a husband, a father, a lawyer, a wife, a child in a family, how, obeying your parents and things like that. And I think it's going to continue getting into those details as we go forward. What we've kind of looked at so far. It really is about what the council has to say to lay people,
Mm-hmm.
remind them that here they have a task that belongs, particularly to them,
Mm-hmm.
and that is to sanctify the temporal order. So that's kind of what I got from what we've read so far.
I would say that's a great description. And that's what this document has been for me, just personally. It's just kind of a reminder of who we are in Christ and that He has a mission for us. And in some not so strong words, it kind of says, I mean, what's the line? It's like basically if you're not if you're not
Oh
actively doing
yeah,
these things, you're useful neither to the church nor yourself. there's a
yeah,
mic
that's
drop
right.
line we've read already that's so good, and it's very
Yep.
let's just say it's not soft, not softly spoken. So good stuff. But here,
Yep.
let's go up. We'll pull it up now. And then Dom, did I make it to where you can see this? Are you seeing this, or are you just seeing me?
Yes, I can see it.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I made that change. I'm actually gonna bump you over a little bit because there we go. All right. So, well, I'll just read it, I guess. So, chapter
All
4,
right.
the various forms of the apostolate. The laity can engage in their apostolic activity either as individuals or together as members of various groups or associations. The individual apostolate, flowing generously from its source in a truly Christian life, John 4:14, is the origin and condition of the whole lay apostolate, even of the organized type, and it admits no substitute. Regardless of status, all laypersons, including those who have no opportunity or possibility of collaboration in associations, are called to this type of apostolate and obliged to engage in it. This type of apostolate is useful at all times and places, but in certain circumstances, it is the only one appropriate and feasible. Let's see, what do you think? Keep going or stop there for a sec?
Maybe just a comment that came to mind
Yeah,
is
yeah.
really the importance that the document gives in rooting any apostolic life in prayer.
Mm,
So we know we have like contemplative monks, and then we have monks who have more of an active vocation, such as Dominicans who teach, and who preach. For example, Benedictines don't usually do that. They're a contemplative order,
mm-hmm,
but what both have in common, Dominicans and Benedictines, is that they do have an active prayer life. So, in other words, what's the Dominican motto? Sharing the fruits of contemplation. Anyway, so this applies to lay people as well. You can't perform your duties as a layperson properly unless you have a prayer life. Here it
mm-hmm,
calls it a truly Christian life.
mm-hmm,
And I think what that means is a life pattern on Christ's life, and his life was deeply rooted in his prayer with the Father. And I mean, in a certain sense, the Paschal mystery, the death and resurrection of Christ, is the ultimate prayer of Christ to the Father.
mm-hmm,
But anyway, that's a tangent. But really, the importance of um, grounding and rooting yourself
mm-hmm,
in prayer is huge.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's what
I think that's
struck
really
me.
huge. I what I like about this particular pair, like these sections that we've read so far, is it kind of like we were saying just in our summation of the document so far. There's no getting out of this for anybody. There's no like they can have individual or lay apostolates, but I don't have to have one. God didn't call me to that. This is kind of saying no, He did, and it's kind of your job to in prayer discern what that is and then walk in it. So anyone listening, you have
Mhm.
something that only you can do that God wants you to be a part of. And this is saying, look, there's no substitute for this. And even when we collaborate, even when we're doing things together and we have organizations, the individual
Mhm.
apostolate is kind of the base of all of those. And so, and if you think about it, like if you have an organization, just let's even like in a business sense, it's kind of the whole
Yeah.
adage of like you're only as good as your weakest link, right? So if you have an apostolate
Mm.
like Catholic Answers, the person who's doing like the video work, like Trent Horn or whatever, very important role, has a
Mhm.
personal apostolate in that. But so does everyone supporting him in another way, right? So we all have these gifts
Yeah.
that we have, and it's important to realize that just because you might not be Trent Horn or whatever, you're not off the hook of having some impactful role in the kingdom, even if it's not like being a televangelist personality or someone on TV or writing books or whatever.
Absolutely. It's from Ephesians, right? The image of the body. You
Mm-hmm.
need hands, you need eyes, you need ears, you need different tasks. Yeah, yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
the body's one, though. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. All right, should we keep going?
I think so.
Cool. All right. Regardless of status, all laypersons, including those who have. Oh wait, did I already read that part? Yep, I read that part.
Uh,
Okay, because
yeah,
it's the only one appropriate and feasible. Yeah. Okay.
that's right.
There are many forms of the apostolate whereby the laity build up the church, sanctify the world, and give it life in Christ. A particular form of the individual apostolate, as well as a sign specially suited to our times, is the testimony of the whole lay life arising from faith, hope, and charity. It manifests Christ living in those who believe in him. Then, by the apostolate, the spoken and written word, which is utterly necessary under certain circumstances, lay people announce Christ, explain and spread his teaching in accordance with one's status and ability, and faithfully profess it. I'll do
Yeah.
this last one too. Furthermore, in collaborating as citizens of this world, whatever pertains to the upbuilding and conducting of the temporal order, the laity must seek in the light of the faith loftier motives of action in their family, professional, cultural, and social life, and make them known to others when the occasion arises. Doing this, they should be aware of the fact that they are cooperating with God, the Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier, and are giving praise to Him. And there is
Excellent.
a finally, but we can maybe. That's only one sentence. Finally, the laity should vivify their life with charity and express it best as they can in their works. And here, I'll make that.
Excellent.
I'll zoom
You know,
in on it.
I'm really glad you read that last sentence. Can you?
That moved
Oh, I
me.
think we lost it.
Yeah, that moved me way up. Hold on, where are we at?
Yeah,
Let's get to. Okay,
chapter 4.
here we go.
That
There's
last
there's
sentence
everything we
was
just read.
yeah. So finally, the laity should vivify their life with charity and express it as best they can in their works. This reminds me of a book I read from my moral theology class. It's a book written by Ambroise Gardet. He's a French Dominican. Ambrose Gardet is, I guess, is how you'd say his name. And he, the book is called "The True Christian Life." It's translated by Dr. Matthew Minard, and it's very beautiful the way it explains that faith, hope, and charity, um, you know, there's a sense in which as theological virtues, they're expressed and received and lived in prayer, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation we have with God,
Mm-hmm.
but they do animate the cardinal virtues, right? Temperance,
Mm-hmm.
justice, fortitude, and there's a fourth one: temperance, justice, fortitude, and ah, temperance, justice, fortitude, and prudence. One of the most important of the four is prudence. Anyway, the point being is that I think it's Saint Augustine who said that prudence is loving well. Temperance is loving in the right way. He might say, fortitude is braving things out of love, and
Mm-hmm.
justice is distributing love where it needs to be distributed. I'm completely butchering his quote, of course, but the point being is that all of the virtues are ways in which love is kind of flows down from the
Hmm.
contemplative upper room.
Hmm.
And the reason why I bring that up is because that's kind of what the beginning, in the first paragraph, it says, um, there are many forms of the apostolate whereby the laity build up the church. Okay, we know that. Okay, a particular form of the individual apostolate, as well as a sign especially suited to our times, is this testimony of the whole life arising, is the word here, arising from faith, hope, and charity. Again, this groundedness, right? The theological life, right, kind of gives opens up the moral life, right? And so this is more of a theological point, but it's very important because if we want, sometimes we can do moral theology in a kind of separated way
Hmm.
from the mysteries that we contemplate, right? The faith
Mm-hmm.
that we have by clinging to God, the hope of eternal life, which means we know that eternal life is in fact charity with God, love of God,
Mm-hmm.
and that charity is manifest on the cross in the resurrection. Anyway, and so it's just really important to realize that prayer is where we drink from the water, and the moral life is the application of those theological virtues as they flow down or arise from, as the text says,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
faith, hope, and charity. So yeah,
Yeah.
prayer is probably gonna be something I hit on a lot. Yeah.
No, it's absolutely true. It's and then furthermore, like in this similar vein, like the order in which your impact in the world begins, or at least is grounded, um is obviously it says here like here's to your point, Christ is living in those who believe in Him. That's where it
Live.
manifests from. So
Yes.
that is a connection to Him through prayer,
Mm-hmm.
through sacraments certainly, but then also by your apostolate, by your action in the world, by your being sent on mission, the spoken and written word, it's like it's
Yes.
saying it's utterly necessary. And so we're announcing
Mm-hmm.
Christ, we're explaining and spreading His teaching in accordance with our status and ability. We're faithfully professing it. So this isn't just like Jesus wanted us to give homeless people shoes, so we do that, and it's nice and sweet sometimes. It's like the thing driving us that is the very life of Christ himself, and that comes necessarily with a profession, a proclamation of the gospel. And it doesn't have to
Yep.
be like you stand on the bar table when you're having a pint with your buddies and start like preaching, but like you can certainly be faithful to the gospel in the way that you talk and the things that you talk about, and also like just occasionally bring it up, like, oh yeah, I believe this, and this is why I act the way I do, or this is why my actions in the world are the way they are, because these are I believe in Christ. And you can profess the gospel really simply, even just in explaining yourself, right? But I think sometimes we get
Yeah.
really tempted to make it this second part where it's all of our citizens of the world stuff,
Mm,
upbuilding and conducting the temporal order, and that's all that this is calling us to do. But it's calling us to express
yeah.
the gospel clearly first, and then as an outpouring of that, these things come. But they're not disconnected, right? So that was what I
No,
was thinking
absolutely.
of.
No, I mean, this is really a kind of Dominican spirituality, right?
Hmm.
And it's interesting that I quoted Gardet, but yeah, spoken and written word, that reminds me a little bit of like apologetics, or just writing
Hmm.
about the mysteries of the faith, homilies as well for the. But this is for people. But I'm just saying
Hmm.
the principle is similar. But yeah, but and the second paragraph is obviously important as something that flows from the first paragraph.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. I mean, all of that is just this connected, and that's the thing is, it's not like they're just like trying to sew these things that aren't related together. I mean, if you really are manifesting Christ living in you because you believe in Him, you're gonna want. It's kind of
Hmm.
like when you have a really good experience at a restaurant. You're gonna want to tell people about it, and then you're gonna want to go there more. Okay. Well, if you're experiencing
Hmm.
Christ and you're having encounters with Him in prayer and in the sacraments, same thing. You're gonna want to tell people about Him, and He's going to impact how you do everything in the world and give you new vision and mission and new opportunities, and new charisms to do that with. Right. So it's like it's almost innate to our humanity, but in another way, I think it becomes supernatural when it's Christ who's behind it, as opposed to just like your great love of Chick-fil-A, you know? um,
Yeah, it's not just clothing the naked and feeding the poor, but
mm,
it's doing so because Christ is in them.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like
Cool.
Mother Teresa, right? She sees Jesus in every person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Man, if we did that all the time, it'd be really hard to be mad at them when they cut me off in traffic. It happened a few
Yeah.
times today. It's like snowing around here, so people are they're losing their
Uh,
minds a little bit. So,
I'm
um,
the worst at road rage. Yeah.
yeah. All right, here. Well, let's move on then. Unless you have anything else to say about that little chunk.
No, that's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Let me kind of preview. Okay, maybe I'll try to get through the rest of 16 and all the way through 17. Give us some stuff to. It might be a
Okay.
little too much, but we'll see. They should all remember that they can reach all men and contribute to the salvation of the whole world by public worship and prayer, as well as by penance and voluntary acceptance of the labors and hardships of life, whereby they become like the suffering of Christ. That's really good. 17. There is a very urgent
Hmm.
need for this individual apostolate in those regions where the freedom of the church is seriously infringed. In these trying circumstances, the laity do what they can to take the place of priests, risking their freedom and sometimes their life to teach Christian doctrine to those around them, training them in a religious way of life and a Catholic way of thinking, and leading them to receive the sacraments frequently and developing them in piety, especially Eucharistic devotion. While the Sacred Synod heartily thanks God for continuing also in our time to raise up laypersons of heroic fortitude in the midst of persecutions, it embraces them with fatherly affection and gratitude. The individual apostolate has a special field in areas where Catholics are few in number and widely dispersed. Here, the laity who engage in the apostolate only as individuals, whether for reasons already mentioned or for special reasons, including those deriving from their own professional activity, they usefully gather into smaller groups for serious conversation without any more formal kind of establishment or organization, so that that indication of the community of the church is always apparent to others as a true witness of love. In this way, by giving spiritual help to one another through friendship and the communicating of the benefit of their experience, they are trained to overcome the disadvantages of the excessively isolated life and activity to make their apostolate more productive.
Oh boy.
That's a good chunk. This little end of 16 was really good.
Yes, it
Uh,
is.
oh man, public worship.
Go ahead. Yeah.
We contribute to the salvation of the world by public
Hmm.
worship, prayer, as well
Hmm.
as penance and being, a part of the coolest job ever and loving what you do. No, accepting the labors and hardships of life where they become like the suffering of Christ. So if you hate your job, hey, offer it up, dude. But even just
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's
No. No.
ordinary things in the lay life that are hard, that are difficult, that are
Hmm.
suffering, and here it's inviting us to invite, to offer that up, um take it on and voluntarily accept it, right? That's a big call. That's not just, yeah, someone should do this, but it isn't going to be me. This is like, no, this is going to be difficult, but whatever the thing is that needs done, I'm going to choose to do it. That's heroic. That's heroic. So that paragraph is
Absolutely.
hitting me hard.
No, I love that paragraph. I mean, become like the suffering Christ. I think we should take that very literally. And how do we do that? How do we become like the suffering Christ? Well, I think what it means is what it's kind of trying to say, but it mentions public worship. So I think that you pointed that out. Public worship is very important, because as opposed to what? As opposed to private worship, which is kind of like the religious sphere is something that is private but not do the temporal order, as the council is saying. No, we need to take this into the temporal order.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to have a private view of religion that liberalism has. It's very emphatic here that
Mm-hmm.
it's saying, your faith is public, and
Mm-hmm.
to become a suffering Christ is to have a life that is Eucharistic. The
Mm-hmm.
Eucharist doesn't stop at Mass. It begins at Mass.
Mm.
It overflows on Monday through Saturday in your public life. Your worship is your life. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just that hour and a half on Sunday. Your worship is your life. And I think that's hugely
Mm-hmm.
important. And Pope Benedict does a great job at opening that up. But notice too, in 17, talks about countries in which practicing one's religion publicly, right, or just practicing period, right, is under persecution.
Mm-hmm.
I think here we see a beautiful, because the council, a lot of people argue about the council. What does the document on religious freedom really mean? Blah blah blah. Here's another insight, part of the council that sheds light on that document, because it's saying that it's not saying religion is a private choice and a private opinion,
Mm-hmm.
like like what liberalism says. It's saying it's public, and yet it's saying here, because it's public, your right to publicly worship God cannot be infringed upon by the tyranny of some country, of some state.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Dignitatis Humanae is talking about, is this idea of
Mm-hmm.
immunity from coercion in matters of religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so here's one way this ties into other doctrines, liberty, which is a
Mm-hmm.
whole conversation on its own. But I just found that really fascinating, that this passage here
Mm-hmm.
sheds light on that document in a really cool way. So to summarize what I'm saying, and this is the last part at the end, but summarize what I'm saying is that, you brought up offer it up. In other words, live your faith publicly, which means the Eucharist begins on Sunday and outflows through the week. Your life is your worship. And then also, the state has no rights to persecute you
Mm-hmm.
in your profession of faith, which is something public, which means you are the dignity of the person means you are free in matters of religion vis-a-vis the
Mm-hmm.
oppression of the state in that domain, because of your dignity. And that's what the
Mm.
religious liberty document is talking about. So anyway, yeah.
No, I agree completely. Like that's one of the things that baffled me too, because it seems like clear to me reading all of the Vatican II documents that I'm like, yeah, it doesn't seem like they're just adopting liberal tolerance. It's mostly that it's like, hey guys, as the it's sort of self-interested in a way too, like just to think of it politically, almost like, hey guys, as the world becomes secular and hates us more and more, it might be convenient for them to legally not be allowed to hate us, um so not that I
Yeah.
think that was the agenda, but it's like that's a very different tone than like, hey, everyone have your religion, kumbaya. It's um, there's
Right.
very clear points in the rest of the council where it's like, hey, we need to evangelize everybody. That's our role. But it's just like,
Hmm.
maybe we shouldn't do that with the sword and like say convert or die. Which I think is fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have room for this, but I just wanted to
Uh-huh.
point out that I was talking to someone who does watch, and he told me, "Hey, Dom, if you get a chance, bring up the religious liberty thing, because a lot of us have questions about it." I don't know if we can do that here right now, but we
Right.
definitely will. But that's something that we definitely need in mind, is the church's understanding of religious liberty, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
council, and is it in line with the past? There's a whole debate about this, but
Right.
I don't think we have room right now. But I am thinking about that question, and we will be addressing it as time goes forward. I've been doing a lot more reading on it as well. But I just want to point that out for listening.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take it on. If we have an opportunity,
I'll
guys, we're
send
gonna
some
read
stuff on
every
it, Drew,
document.
as
So
well.
yeah, that'd be good because I need to study up a little bit. Just one note, Dot, your mic is kind of cutting out and do it. I don't know if it's a connection thing. I think it might be because you're a little blurry. But
Uh,
if there's nothing we can do, that's okay. We can keep chugging
yeah.
along. But every once in a while, we
Do you
lose
want
signal a
me?
little bit.
If it gets bad, just let me know, okay?
Okay. Yeah, it was a little bad earlier.
Is it
I could
bad?
kind of make out what you were saying, but yeah, there were some moments where it was pretty like robot sounding. So I think it was just, it sounded like buffering, but we can just see how it goes for the rest of the thing. Because I'm guessing, yeah, you'd probably have to change your internet settings or something, huh? But cool. Let's see. I read all 17. So let's go on to 18. All right. The faithful are called to engage in the apostolate as individuals in the varying circumstances of their life. They should remember, nevertheless, that man is naturally social and that it has pleased God to unite those who believe in Christ into the people of God, 1 Peter 2, 5-10, and into one body, 1 Corinthians 12:12. The group apostolate of Christian believers then happily corresponds to a human and Christian need at the same time, and at the same time signifies the communion and unity of the church in Christ, who said, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them." Matthew 18:20. For this reason, the faithful should participate in the apostolate by way of united effort. They should be apostles both in their family communities and in their parishes and dioceses, which themselves express the community nature of the apostolate, as well as in the informal groups which they decide to form among themselves. Maybe I'll read this one too. The group apostolate is very important also because the apostolate must often be performed by way of common activity, both the church communities and the various spheres. For the associations established for carrying on the apostolate in common sustain their members, form them for the apostolate, and rightly organize and regulate their apostolic work so that much better results can be expected than if each member were to act on his own. I like that this first flows from like a theology of it before getting practical of like, it's just easier when you have friends. That's kind of what the end sounds like. But the beginning is like, we're in one body and where Christ is gathered to, two are gathered together, Christ is with us, There's this theology behind our design for communion, our design for being social. That's really, I know you and I seem to always come back to this. It's really Eucharistic in nature, right? It's about communion with Christ and being a part of the body. And then it's just like, and it's more effective. Then comes like the more business type of thing of like, and it's just more effective when you have other people. So.
Yeah. No, first of all, can you hear me good right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good now.
There's a little lag. But,
now it's starting.
I totally agree with you. Do you want me to just kind of change my internet and come back?
Yeah, sure. I can think on this a little more. And yeah, you can come back and I'll make sure I won't think on anything too juicy. I'll just, it'll be boring. Cool. All right, so yeah, we'll wait for him to kind of change his internet settings up, see if we can get a better mic connection, and then we'll carry on. But yeah, as I was kind of already saying, this first paragraph, this first paragraph, in light of prior paragraphs talking about how it starts individually, like the root of all apostolates, whether a group or individual, starts with individuals, and so in a way, each individual needs to be activated and connected to Christ, have a deep and rich prayer life, and have this sense of mission and a personal apostolate. But then it becomes better when you have multiple people. So now it's going to talk more about why that can be more effective, right? So a lot of times I feel like church documents can do this where it can be confusing because it spends like 3 paragraphs in this instance talking about the individual apostolate. And if you had just read paragraph 18, maybe you would go, is it saying it's better to do this with groups rather than alone? It's like, well, no, if you read it in light of 16 and 17, you know that that's not what it's saying. It's just expounding upon itself, right? Hey, Dom, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Cool. Yeah, and that sounds a lot better. I was just kind of
Okay.
explaining how sometimes, like church documents, like if you isolate a paragraph like this, it would almost make it seem like the group apostolate is better, but it just spent 3 saying that the individual apostolate is the root of that. So that's why it's important
Mm.
to read things in context.
Yeah. No, yeah, yeah. Seems to me both are good. We
Mm-hmm.
just, yeah, maybe the documents, and I'm just speculating here, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's saying it's precisely because the individual apostolate is good, but that
Yep.
because it says man is a social animal, right? At one
Right.
point, and it says therefore, apostolates are designed towards, their telos is ultimately communion, right? Which
Right.
means community, and it talks about body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but anytime you talk about body, you talk about love, you talk about
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice, because you talk about the person and society. These are de Lubac talks about this in his book Catholicism, which means kind of universal communion. The word
Mm-hmm.
Catholicism kind of means universal communion.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and so the person and the community are both important. It's almost like a dialectic.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah, no, that's
but I'm
good.
back.
Yeah, and it
This
sounds
audio
better.
thing. Oh,
Your
yeah.
your image looks clearer too. So,
Good.
um,
Thank God.
yeah, got a
Yeah.
good connection. One thing I wanted to point out too is I love how when you get to the second paragraph, it starts talking about participating in the apostolate by way of united effort, which is great. That's better than having a bunch of competing apostolates, right? Like we want them to
Yeah.
to be collaborative rather than competitive because we're all part of the same body. But then also look at how it naturally emanates from the first society. It goes from the family,
Ah.
communities, parishes, and dioceses. And like maybe it was just natural,
Yeah.
but I read into this stuff a lot and I'm like, oh, that seems to be indicative of like maybe how this naturally happens, right? There's a pattern here of starting at the first society and then emanating outwards towards the world. And I know eventually it's going to talk about the
Yeah.
actual world and not just the diocesan level, but
No, that's beautiful. It's almost like all of these, circles interlocking, these
mm-hmm,
ellipses almost, and you have this participation model. And really, it's a commentary on the nature of the church, right? You
mm-hmm,
have the presence of the whole church in particular instantiations of various degrees.
mm-hmm,
And that's really, you see a lot of this in Lumen Gentium. No,
mm-hmm,
this is beautiful. I think we're going to encounter this a lot more as well.
mm-hmm. Okay, we want to keep going.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. In the present circumstances, it is quite necessary that, in the area of lay activity, the united and organized form of the apostolate be strengthened. In fact, only the pooling of resources is capable of fully achieving all of the aims of the modern apostolate and firmly protecting its interests. Here, it is important that the apostolate encompasses even the common attitudes and social conditions of those for whom it is designed. Otherwise, those engaged in the apostolate are often unable to bear up the pressure of public opinion or social institutions. Let's see. That's kind of finishing out 18. Do you have any reflections on that, real quick? And then maybe we'll move on to the
Well,
next thing.
it sounds to me like they're saying know your audience, and this reminds me a
Mm-hmm.
lot of something Bishop Barron has said quite often,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of his modus operandi, right? Which is like look at the culture, find the kind of seeds of the word, and like talk to
Mm-hmm.
that. Because if you're saying something that no one's interested in or knows about,
Mm-hmm.
there's no like point of contact from which you can spring up, like a springboard. And that's kind of how, maybe I'm misreading it, but that's the first thing that came to mind is know
Hmm.
who you're talking to, find a kind of common ground, and then from there move forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and it's important too as like the whole world is online. A lot of times we feel like we just need to get all the way to the bottom of like where you should be and what you should think. But yeah, especially in evangelistic efforts, there are things that are like people are not ready to hear day one, right? And it's not like you're lying
Hmm.
to them or withholding from them, but you do want to. I'm going to use the word. You want to accommodate people with with how much they can
Yeah.
bear, right? And so like
Yeah.
if you're trying to evangelize someone and build a discipleship relationship with them, and they have no interest in the Catholic Church or in religion,
Hmm.
it would be wise to approach them very differently than someone who's like already bought in and is like has a bunch of like has a bunch of icons on their wall and like 3 rosaries on them at all times. Like there's a different level there. You can have a deeper conversation with the person who's already bought in. And to be
Absolutely.
honest, some of the stuff that you might bring up with the person who's not initiated, if you were to go all the way to like, oh well, let's talk about, Marian apparitions or Eucharistic miracles, and like, or let's talk about, like the church's, teaching on this or that or whatever. It's not that
Hmm.
you shouldn't bring it up if they ask. It's that like it's not prudent to where they're at. Like if obstacle one is does God exist or not, it's like maybe just stick there,
Dude,
Um,
absolutely. Can I just say, because this is like so obvious, right, to anyone who's talked to non-Catholics before.
mhm,
It's so darn obvious, that
mhm.
I've realized that people who object to this line of reasoning are probably people who just do not evangelize, right? To me, it's
Yep.
like when I'm talking to a family member or a friend who's either an atheist, an agnostic, or when I'm talking to like a Buddhist, like or when I'm talking to
Mhm.
an Anglican, a Baptist, I don't know, like it's obvious that I can't lead with certain things and that I have
Right.
to see first of all where they're at, find some kind of common, a hook, right? Like, okay, that's something we can work with. And like you don't start with certain things. And to me,
Mhm.
that's just so commonsensical and obvious that anyone saying otherwise is just clearly not engaged in any kind of human interactions. And there's people like that. This is a pet peeve. You can tell I'm kind of
Mhm.
annoyed about this, but
Oh,
I've
that's
had
okay.
people say, yeah, it's like, what do you mean? You should lead with like, right away contraception and like same sex, marriage and all these things. And I'm like, if they ask me, I'm not going to lie to them, obviously, right? And I'm
Mhm.
also not going to say, well, if you accept this one thing that we agreed on, go ahead and receive communion. Like, no.
Right.
But like, it's just obvious that you have to go about it in a way that's clever.
Mhm.
Anyway, this is a
Well,
pet
and
peeve. Sorry.
Jesus did this too. Jesus did this. He walked with. He was never not saying the truth, but he knew where people. He really, and Jesus is obviously better at this than all of us. Than at this, he knew what the real obstacle was, and he was more interested in the question behind the
Mhm.
question with people he talked to, and he gets there very
Yeah.
quick. It's going to take us a lot longer than it took Jesus to get to the bottom of those things. I wanted to read this
Yeah.
verse though in relation to this. I always think of
Go
Saint
ahead.
Paul, and this is in 1 Corinthians, I think, is it 9? Yeah, 9, 19 through 23. For though I am free with respect to all, I have made myself a slave to all so that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, though I am not free from God's law but am under Christ's law, so that I might
Mhm.
win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that I might by all means save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, so that I might share in its blessings. That is the verse I think of for evangelism. And like when he's
Yes.
saying I'm outside, I'm like I became as one outside the law. He's not saying I'm becoming immoral, but
Yeah.
he's becoming appropriate to those people so that they can accept him, and then he can bring them into Christ. And so um, I think of this all the
Right.
time. Like I have different contexts for different people, knowing where
Yeah.
they're at, and it requires knowing them really.
No,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, no, and he contrasts, the law of the Torah, right, and the law of
mm-hmm,
Christ, which is the
mm-hmm,
law. But that verse you read, what's so beautiful about it is that that verse is almost like a definition of the word Catholic, right?
mm,
To be Catholic is to be the all-embracing. It's cosmic. We've
mm-hmm,
really lost this kind of cosmic, mystic, ultimate vision of what the church is. We got this weird idea that we're just another denomination that happens to get propositions correctly. Like that is
right,
not what Catholicism is. And
mm-hmm,
that's why Catholicism is able to reach out to all men.
mm-hmm,
It's the true humanism. And you can
mm-hmm,
be all things to all people precisely because of the truth, right?
mm-hmm,
People think it's truth or compromise. No, the
mm-hmm,
only way you can get to actual agreement that is genuine and not just a compromise is if it's grounded on a truth that has the capacity to gather in all men.
mm-hmm.
And anyway, this is another pet peeve of mine. But that verse is that section is beautiful because to me that's what it means to be Catholic.
mm-hmm,
You can talk to every single human being
mm-hmm,
because Christ has called every single human being. That's what it means to
Mm-hmm.
be all embracing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dom, someone's gonna say if we're embracing everybody, we're justifying their situations in life. Sorry, sorry, I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah,
I
no,
can't
you're
help
good.
myself. It's just too funny.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's so many fiducia supplicans jokes I've been making with my priest lately. It's
Uh,
been great.
yeah. No, honestly,
um,
that's what we've been doing too. It's like, because everyone's kind of going wild about it, and I'm not,
yeah,
I understand, but like, I think honestly, what I've been doing recently is just making jokes about it, But anyway,
yeah, yeah. It helps. It helps.
yeah,
Cool. All right. Well, maybe we'll carry on to 19. Looks like there's
sounds
a
good.
couple paragraphs here. There is a great variety of associations in the apostolate. Some set before themselves the broad apostolic purpose of the church. Others aim to evangelize and sanctify in a special way. Some purpose to infuse a Christian spirit into the temporal order. Others bear witness to Christ in a special way through works of mercy and charity. Among these
Mm,
associations, which promote and encourage closer unity between the concrete life of the members and their faith, must be given primary consideration. Associations are not ends unto themselves. Rather, they should serve the mission of the church to the world. Their apostolic dynamism depends on their conformity with the goals of the church, as well as on the Christian witness and evangelical spirit of every member and of the whole association. Ooh, let's reflect on those two first, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Man, I think this is really important. This
hmm
this statement right here, they are not ends unto themselves, rather they should serve the mission of the church to the world. This is the difference between what this document is calling for and like the sort of like social group activism of like the 1950s, like I think of like Elks Club,
yeah,
and like honestly what Masonism has become in a lot of ways.
hmm
They're just like group things that like, yeah, we sell pancakes and we give money to charity. I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm talking about the Knights of Columbus, and maybe I am in a way, but I'm a member. So, but it's like, instead of just having like a group that is an end to itself that like maybe has
hmm
lost the plot, they should always be conforming to the church and to the world. And it says here, their apostolic dynamism depends on the conformity with the goals of the church, Christian witness, and evangelical spirit of the whole association. So that's like really a
yeah,
gut check for any apostolate to say like, hey, are we actually doing the thing that we used to be doing or should be doing? Or are we just
yeah,
becoming like the Elks Club or like Rotary or something else that's like, are we just like a gentleman's club that happens to be Catholic? Or, whatever it is, like we're just baking
yeah.
cookies, the ladies of the church baking cookies or whatever. I'm trying not to sound like too pointed with that, but I think it's really an important point.
No, I mean, I think we all know that, there's a tendency, what's it, what's that word I'm looking for? I guess it's kind of like entropy, right? There's a tendency
Mm-hmm.
to like, I love the way you put it. We've lost the plot, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we kind of, apathy, that's the term I'm looking for.
Yeah.
An apathy settles in, and certain associations kind of become covartus in se, right? They're like closed in on themselves. It becomes a
Mm-hmm.
celebration of themselves. But
Mm-hmm.
what does it say? It says, rather, they should serve the mission of the church to the world. What's the mission of the
Mm-hmm.
church? And the answer is love, which is the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of being closed in on yourself. It's being
Mm-hmm.
open to the other, right? It's going
Mm-hmm.
out. Mission flows from communion. And yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. And I think
Mm-hmm.
everyone kind of does. We know those groups that were started that kind of become apathetic, and it's a self celebration, and there's really, no
Yeah.
point to them anymore. No, no, be reinvigorated, set the
Mm-hmm.
flame anew, and it's got to be the flame of charity. Yeah, going out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and if it's, I think it's hard because when something gets big and there's like resources and there's assets and there's money, you have to manage those things. But especially in our culture, I think
hmm
it's very easy for the managerial components to kind of become the whole beast itself. Whereas like apostolic dynamism would be, hey guys, if that's getting in the way, scrap it all. Let's go back to square one and have no regrets about doing that. And it takes a bold set of people to maybe call for that, because it's easy for us, I think, to get involved in something, get complacent, and go, this is how it's always been. Who am I to change it? But I don't know. This is the CEO in me. Like if I had an apostolate that say was like formal and registered and had a lot of donations and money, and it started to feel stale, I would be 100%. I would be up for joining, or not. What am I saying? He's sorry. Dom is joining again. He dropped from the call, so I'm trying to. Dom, you there? Oh, interesting. 1 second, guys. Getting him back in here.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah. Let's see.
I'm back. I'm so sorry.
Okay, there
This
we go.
darn internet.
That's fine. I was like mid sentence, and then like you said, Dom was joining, and I said the word joining as I was trying to think what I was saying. I was saying if I had like, let's say I had a big apostolate that I was the president of, and I
Yeah.
felt that it got this way and lost its apostolic dynamism. That's when it's time to just
Mhm.
like make those tough decisions and go, what do we need to do? What do we need to get rid of? What's encumbering us from being, you know, in conformity with the goals of the church, being on mission, and not being an end unto ourselves. It's a hard decision. And
Yeah.
then sometimes it's just start over, right? Like sometimes it's like, hey, maybe this thing has outlived itself, and to start fresh, we just kind of start a new thing with new people. But anyways,
Yeah. It's
that's
almost
a
like there's been an accumulation of things that were useful at one point, but now we're like overcrowded.
mm-hmm,
And I guess what I'm saying is that the sense in which, especially today, this kind of applies to the church in general, right?
mm-hmm,
Church itself needs to shed some stuff. It needs to kind of wake up, and it's kind of all
right,
rusty. It's got all this scaffolding around itself, like all the bureaucracy, right?
mm-hmm,
And kind of, shake all stuff off, kind of shed some stuff it doesn't need anymore. And I think
mm-hmm,
we saw this with its temporal power, it's the papal states, and some of the kind of I don't know, political pomp, and
mm-hmm,
the institutions themselves throughout Europe are just collapsing. And
mm-hmm,
maybe that's okay.
mm-hmm,
Maybe that means she'll become a more personal church and less institutional church. Yeah.
mm-hmm. We've been talking about this in my parish a lot too. We're discerning how to kind of change our entire church culture, and one of the things my priest keeps really being focused in on, and it's good, is that he, because everyone's like, oh, well, we should, bring this video series in, bring in a speaker, do a thing, and he goes, he always brings it back to, if all we do is a program that gets people excited for a weekend, that might last that weekend, or it might last a couple months or whatever, but they'll be dependent on the program. But his whole vision is much more of like, I would rather have people learn the things they need to by individuals reaching out to other individuals in their spheres and inviting them closer to Jesus step by step. Because that type of culture, it won't matter who the priest is. It won't matter, what programs Ascension has or doesn't have. It's that individual personal church you're kind of
Yeah.
mentioning. So it's just, as you mentioned that, I'm like, yeah, this is what we're trying to do. It's very difficult, by the way. It's very difficult to get people on board with
Yeah.
like, hey, you should be actively reaching out to people in your sphere to bring them closer to Jesus. They go, huh? I don't know how to do that. And it's like, well, okay, maybe just go out there and try it, and then come back and we'll reflect on how it went, Um, but
No,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that, because it's different than just like, hey, let's just throw money at this, or like throw a free meal
Yeah.
and like a video, which I get, that's ironic because I make videos for a living, but it's like there needs to be that personal dynamism, right? So I think it's good that, yeah, we're both kind of thinking of it that way.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right, let's keep chugging along. Finish out 19.
Okay.
I'm gonna get a drink of water first. I'm doing this
By the
carnivore
way, how's my
diet.
sound?
It's good now. It's good now.
Okay. Mm.
Now, in view of the progress of social institutions and the fast-moving pace of modern society, the global nature of the Church's mission requires that the apostolic enterprises of Catholics should more and more develop organized forms in the international sphere. Catholic international organizations will more effectively achieve their purpose if the groups comprising them, as well as their members, are more closely united to these international organizations. Maintaining the proper relationship to church authorities, the laity have the right to found and control such associations and to join those already existing. Yet the dispersion of efforts must be avoided. This happens when new associations and projects are promoted without a sufficient reason, or if antiquated associations or methods are retained beyond their period of usefulness. It's kind of like what we were just talking about. Nor is it always fitting to transfer indiscriminately forms of the apostolates that have been used in one nation to other nations. A lot of
Yeah.
prudential stuff here of like, hey, like, don't double your efforts if you don't need to. don't hold on to something that's antiquated if it's no longer useful.
Yeah,
And just because it worked here doesn't mean you have to, copy paste it everywhere else. I think that's all just wisdom to reflect on, right? That's really good stuff. What are your thoughts?
definitely. Yeah, well, I also think that the text, again, we got to remember when it was written. I don't think it foresaw what happened very soon after this was promulgated, which is a collapse in religious orders, a collapse in
Mm,
institutions, vocations. The text definitely is offering some very helpful kind of principles that are prudent. Um, but also, I do think that historically, the text itself, I don't think it saw what was going to happen either.
hmm
So situating the text historically might also help to kind of realize this is
mm,
before a lot of the collapse. But yeah,
right.
so
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. All right, let me just scroll ahead here and see how long do we have left in this chapter. We've got, let's see. So we're
oh
on 20 through 22 would get us to the end, and
yeah,
we're almost an hour in. I think we can make it. What do you think?
yeah, I
Okay,
think
maybe
so.
maybe I'll just read. Well, 20 is pretty big, but I'll try to get through all of it. And then
Okay.
that'll give us a good pace. So, many decades ago, the laity in many nations began to dedicate themselves increasingly to the apostolate. They grouped themselves into various kinds of activities and societies, which, while maintaining a closer union with the hierarchy, pursued and continued to pursue goals which are properly apostolic. Of these associations, or even among similar and older institutions, those are especially noteworthy which followed different methods of operation and yet produced excellent results for Christ's kingdom. These societies were deservedly recommended and promoted by the popes and many bishops, from whom they received the title of Catholic Action, and they were often described as the collaboration of the laity in the apostolate of the hierarchy. Whether these forms of the apostolate have the name Catholic Action or some other title, they exercised an apostolate of great value for our times and consist in the combination and simultaneous possession of the following characteristics. A. The immediate aim of organizations of this kind is the Church's apostolic aim, that is, the evangelization and sanctification of men and the formation of a Christian conscience among them so that they can infuse the spirit of the gospel into various communities and departments of life. B. Cooperating with the hierarchy in their own way, the laity contribute to the benefit of their experience to and assume responsibility for the direction of these organizations, the consideration of the conditions in which the pastoral activity of the church is to be conducted, and the elaboration and execution of the plan of things to be done. Man, that was a long sentence. C. The laity acts together in the manner of an organic body, so that the community of the church is more fittingly symbolized and the apostolate rendered more effective. D. They offer themselves, whether they offer themselves spontaneously or are invited to action and direct cooperation with the apostolate of the hierarchy. The laity function under the higher direction of the hierarchy itself, and the latter can sanction this cooperation by an explicit mandate. Organizations which, in the opinion of the hierarchy, the ensemble of these characteristics is realized, must be considered to be Catholic action even though they take on various forms and titles because of the needs of different regions and peoples. The Most Holy Council earnestly recommends these associations, which surely answer the needs of the apostolate of the Church among many peoples and countries, and invites the clergy and laity working in them to develop the above-mentioned characteristics to an ever greater degree and to cooperate at all times with all other forms of the apostolate in a fraternal manner in the church. All right, I'm going to take a drink of water so you can share any thoughts you have.
Sure. So as you were reading, I actually kind of jotted down the main points of A through, is it D?
Yep.
A, B, C, D. Yeah, one, two, three, four, A, B, C, D. Yeah. So, point one, what struck me is that organizations such as Catholic Action, which is a historical Catholic organization, just the idea of lay people forming associations, spread the mission of the
Your
church.
mic is cutting out
These
just a
are
little bit.
all directed.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. Uh, no, it's not your fault.
No,
It's
now it's
my
better. Now
fault.
it's better. Keep going.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay. All right. So the first point that struck me is that it's all targeted towards the universal call to holiness. And especially in this document, we're talking about the laity. This holiness is not something just for the bishops or for priests or for monks, right? It's for everybody. So that's the first thing that I got from it. Second thing I got up is that lay people should not hesitate to take up responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be an onlooker or a bystander. Go ahead and take initiative. Basically, the third point that
Mm-hmm.
struck me is the need for harmony. Harmony is necessary for effectiveness, and just for good order and peace in the church's mission.
Mm-hmm.
And the final point that I got was hierarchy, which is you can't have order apart from the authority of Christ, right? Which brings about a heavenly order on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so that harmony is not going to be possible without, right, of
Mm-hmm.
apostolate in general. So
Mm-hmm.
you need cooperation between the hierarchy and the lay people. So that's the fourth thing. So to reiterate quickly, universal call to holiness, taking responsibility, harmony and effectiveness, and then
Mm-hmm.
hierarchy. That's what I got from that.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good summary, and it's really helpful to summarize a paragraph that long too. Yeah, I was the this
Mhm.
is interesting to me as a former Protestant because like as a Protestant, the when it talks about offering yourself spontaneously here, that was what happened. Like someone would be like, "Hey, pastor guy, God's calling me to
Mhm.
do this, man," and he'd be like, "Dude, go for it," and that was it. You know, unless it became problematic, that was it, right? And so like even sometimes they had to flex
Yeah.
their authority, right, or try to, but like people would just get
Mhm.
lit up and be like, I need to do this. And then just be like, I'm going to do it. And sometimes they wouldn't even tell their pastor. They would just go do it. And he'd find out later and be like, oh, sweet. Um, with Catholics, I've noticed
Mhm.
it's almost the opposite. They're like terrified. They're like sheepish. They're like, oh man, is this even like, should I even try to do this? Like the hierarchy, should they, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we've been talking about this in our church. As I mentioned, we're doing this sort of renewal effort. One of the things that we noted just in praying and kind of discerned would be a measure of success is if this starts happening. If people are spontaneously coming to our priest going, hey, I want to start doing this thing. How can I do that? Or how can I get involved in what's already happening? Because then you realize the culture is right, you know? So
Yeah.
a lot of us, if we're invited,
Yeah.
we feel better about that because it's like, oh, cool. I don't have to worry about being in the right or in the wrong or stepping on toes. But man, if this is spontaneously happening, you know that something, the prior step is going really well. People are being called to things, they're being given charisms, and the Spirit is moving them into action. That's just that'd be a beautiful fruit. So, that's just a reflection from a former Protestant. Like, that's one
Totally
thing.
agree.
Protestantism is like too spontaneous, if that makes sense, and Catholicism is kind of the opposite. So we could learn a little bit, but not too much
Yeah.
from them.
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of a division here between the charismatic dimension, and here I don't mean the gifts of the spirit necessarily in the sense of like speaking in tongues, but I
Mm-hmm.
mean the pneumatic, right?
Right.
PNEUM, pneumatic dimension, and the hierarchical dimension, the
Mm-hmm.
office. And this is kind of a longer conversation, but Ratzinger in his book Pilgrim Fellowship of Faith talks about the relationship between the pneumatic dimension and the hierarchical dimension. And he says that the office itself is pneumatic and it's
Hmm.
meant to be participated in by the lay faithful. Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, participation is means that there's a difference. You can't have
Mm-hmm.
participation without difference. But I do think that this, in a certain sense, there is a criticism towards Catholics, which is we've emphasized the hierarchical and office so much in contrast to the
Mm-hmm.
pneumatic because of we're not Protestants, quote unquote, that we've lost the proper balance of the relationship between the two. And I think there's someone who made a joke, which is like Protestants are kind of the evangelistic branch of the Catholic Church, right? They're doing all the evangelization, and then once people become Christian, then we hit them with the doctrine, and then they get smart. That's.
Right. That's so funny.
But I don't know. Maybe we should be. I mean, maybe we could learn from Protestants in that area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dynamism certainly. Like, there's this like I don't even know what it is. I mean, it is just like a personal excellence and like a sort of like an almost an entrepreneurial mindset, if I can use that word in this context. Like Protestantism is more comfortable with like
Mhm.
DIY, build it yourself, entrepreneurship style
Yeah.
mission work, whereas yeah, we like order in the Catholic Church. And but I mean, if you think about some of the great states or saints, they were certainly entrepreneurial in a way, right? Like I think of like anyone that founded a major religious order in their time, it was like, whoa, you can
Mhm.
just do that. You can just get a call, and usually sometimes there's opposition and great opposition, but there's sort of that's probably not the best word, but
Yeah,
that's the thing I think of is it's like almost entrepreneurial. You're like you have that I guess drive to put forward those new things in the world, so long as like this says you're in communion with and submitting to the hierarchy. That's a very important distinction to make.
exactly.
That you can be entrepreneurial, creative, and
I
all that, but you're not being
No, I
creative
love
with
the balance.
dogma. Um, so, what are you gonna
Yeah, no,
say?
exactly. I love that balance, right, with the sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, sorry, there's a lag again. Oh my
Okay.
gosh. Yeah.
We're so close.
So oh my gosh. I know. Anyway, real quick, let's see if I can get it out. There
Yep.
is this beautiful balance between the kind of creative and explosiveness, you might say, of the Holy Spirit and the structural, dimension of the hierarchy. And
Mm-hmm.
Balthazar talked about this as the Marian dimension and the Petrine structure. And, you can't have one without the other. And one kind of keeps the other it's almost like they fit into each, almost like a perichoresis,
Mm-hmm.
mutual indwelling of the Petrine and the Marian. I think he talks about this in his book on the papacy. But it's, again, another conversation, and I might getting out. But in other words, just love the harmony here in this
Mm-hmm.
passage. I find that beautiful.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Well, here, let's keep plugging away. We have two more paragraphs. So really two numbered paragraphs, three little chunks. All associations of the apostolate must be given due appreciation. Those, however, which the hierarchy have praised or recommended as responsive to the needs of time and place, or have ordered to be established as particularly urgent, must be held in highest esteem by priests, religious, and laity, and promoted according to each one's ability. I'm sorry, religious and laity promoted. Wait, sorry, I got the capitalization of religious there threw me off. Among these associations, moreover, international
Oh.
associations or groups of Catholics must be specially appreciated at the present time. I'll just keep going. Deserving of special honor and
Hmm.
commendation in the church are those lay people, single or married, who devote themselves with professional experience, either permanently or temporarily, to the service of associations and their activities. There is a source of great joy for the Church in the fact that there is a daily increase in the number of laypersons who offer their personal service to apostolic associations and activities, either within the limits of their own nation or in the international field, or especially in Catholic mission communities and in regions where the Church has only recently been implanted. The pastors of the Church should gladly and gratefully welcome these laypersons and make sure that the demands of justice, equity, and charity relative to their status be satisfied to the fullest extent, particularly as regards to proper support for them and their families. They should also take care to provide for these lay people the necessary formation, spiritual consolation, and incentive. All right, that's
Awesome.
it. There's three little chunks there. Any thoughts?
No, just I let's pray that our priests, our pastors, and our bishops give us the, legally speaking and logistically speaking, the tools we need to sanctify the temporal order, and vice versa. Let's give especially our priests, especially our pastors, the tools
Mm-hmm.
they need to celebrate the liturgy beautifully and to administer confession, communion, anointing of the sick, all of those things, to us. It's a back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
They take of us and we take of them. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I got from that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, trying to think if I have anything else to reflect on in here. Not a whole lot. Yeah, it's kind of straightforward there. I do. I mean, this part here about
Uh,
if there's something that they're mentioning in particular, that whether the hierarchy says it needs to be established or has highlighted, then that's what we should focus on first. Like that's just intelligent, right? Like let's direct our resources to the
mhm.
most urgent thing, whatever that's deemed to be. A lot of this is really practical, but I think let's see. Yeah, that would end chapter 4. So then let's see. We have chapter 5. Do you know how many chapters are in this document, Dom? 6. And then an exhortation. So there's 6 chapters. So we're almost there. We have chapter 5 and 6, and then there's an exhortation at the end. So we're getting close to having finished the whole document. Let's see. Did I lose him? Dom, you there? He might have froze. Well, we're pretty much at the end of reading for this section, everybody. I'll see if he reconnects so we can do a plug. Let me just go here for a minute. Does anyone have any questions about what we read or anything else to reflect on? Oh, here he comes. Oh, and he dropped. I'll just hang out for another second and take any questions or anything about what we read today, and see if he reconnects in a second. So, in the meantime, I don't know. I'm trying to scroll up back to where we were last. So, just as a reminder, I guess at this point, we just read all of chapter 4. So that was the various forms of the apostolate, right? So this is going to be talking specifically about how that can look. And really, there's a lot of freedom in that, right? So that's kind of good. So let me message Dom real quick and see if he's able to get back on. Let's see. Okay. Feel free to close out. My internet died. All right. Well, everybody, make sure that you go check out Dom's channel, the Logos Project. I have him linked in the description. Not sure what he's got going on next. I didn't get to ask him, but I know he's always working on cool stuff, whether it's just his blog articles or other videos coming out. He's had some really good content lately. I think, yeah, he's got a couple. Oh, he's trying to join. Let's see. Then we can ask him. There he is. Hold on. Let's get him in here. Hey, can you hear me, Dom?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Let's go. There we go. I was just about to try and remember if I had remembered anything you told me you're up to next as I was plugging your channel. So, yeah, if you want to give yourself a plug of what you're doing, where they can find you, and what's coming up next.
Yes, first of all, I'm really sorry about the internet.
Okay.
It's particularly bad today. I don't know why. Maybe the weather. The weather seems fine. I don't know what it is, but I'll try to make sure it doesn't happen again. I know how that's annoying for viewers, but no, I mean, I'm going to continue the series with Drew. I'm having a lot of fun going through the documents. I think this is, very helpful to others, and I think we should definitely continue doing that. I did mention I had some projects in mind, but I've become more busy now that my semester has begun, so I can't make any promises. But just stay tuned. Oh yeah, it's okay. Last thing is that I'm trying to do the readings for uh, important feast days throughout the liturgical year with a homily either from Pope Benedict before he was Pope or when he was Pope, and other theologians like Hans von Balthasar or John Paul II. So look out for those.
Cool. Awesome. And yeah, we'll keep doing this on most Mondays. Obviously, every once in a while, one of us is traveling or there's a holiday or something, so we skip those weeks. So we're gonna keep you guys on your toes. But with that,
Yep.
I don't know that we've picked what the next document would be, but we probably have like maybe 1 or 2 more episodes on this document. If you guys have any suggestions or requests, maybe just drop those in the comments and let us know what would be most helpful. And then Dom and I'll talk about it too and see what we might want to do. But we'll just keep plugging along with Vatican II documents. That's pretty much it as far as this goes. Obviously, you're watching right now on my channel, Drew the Catholic. So make sure you hit like and subscribe to both of our channels. I'm trying to think if I have anything cool coming up. We're trying to put a couple episodes together, but same sort of thing as you. I'm pretty busy, so we're not. No promises, which is like the lamest plug ever. But one thing I'm trying to do is like this format of show works really well for me. So even when we're not doing the Dom and Drew show on Vatican II, I think I'm going to start doing more of this in general. And I might revisit some council texts that are commonly misunderstood. For prior councils, I might even go kind of address some historical texts, at that kind of directly address objections to Catholicism from like a Protestant perspective or an Orthodox perspective or whatever. I don't know. All still planning, so stay tuned. But thanks for watching, everybody. Let us know what you're thinking in the comments, and we will talk to you all soon. See you later.